Welcome to Keeping It Green, a podcast for ornamental plant professionals and enthusiasts, with hosts Margaret Pickoff, Tom Butzler, and Tim Abbey.
Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Green, a podcast from Penn State Extension for ornamental plant professionals and enthusiasts. I'm one of your hosts, Margaret Pickoff. I'm a horticulture educator with Penn State Extension, and on each episode, I'll be joined by my colleagues on the green industry team as co-hosts. On today's episode, my co-hosts are Tim Abbey and Tom Butzler. Hi, Tim and Tom.
Hey, Margaret.
Good afternoon there, Margaret.
Thanks for being here today. On today's episode, we'll be joined by Tyler Pollock from Dendro Tree and Landscapes. But before we get to our interview with Tyler, we'll start out with a quick check-in about what we're seeing outside our doors or what we're thinking about in the field at this time of year. So Tom, maybe we'll start with you. What's on your mind at this time of year in early April?
Well, in a previous podcast, someone had mentioned that the daffodils were in bloom, and of course they're in full bloom, but I'm really excited. The maple trees are in full bloom, and it's not something that people really are planting for, a blooming maple tree. But as a beekeeper, I get excited about it because my bees are, really trying to hit pollen right now because they're developing all these baby bees. And so that's a great early pollen source. So you can see, red tinges on the hillsides and of course in the landscapes where people have, red maples and others. So yeah, that's what's going on. I think kind of neat right now.
Yeah, I love seeing maple flowers. I think they're so pretty. And I think we're much further along in springtime here in Philly than you are. But
yes,
I remember seeing some very happy bumblebees on some crocuses a couple weeks ago, and there was henbit coming out, that nice purpley weed. Nice plant, not always a weed, but they really seem to enjoy those super early flowers.
Yeah, pollinator activity is picking up.
Yeah, that's a great sign. How about you, Tim?
Well, I'll stick with the flowering theme. When I moved into my house 5 years ago, I found a little redbud seedling that was probably, 3 inches, 4 inches tall. And I relocated it, and now it's probably 5.5 feet tall. And the first year that it's actually started to flower.
Whoa.
So that's, for me, is fantastic because it's one of my favorite trees. I don't know whether it'll, have a long life here, but it's really nice to see it flower.
Yeah. Oh, and those flowers are so pretty. Yeah, I love to see that. I got my first spotted lanternfly question of the season this week. And so someone's looking for information or a prediction really about whether they need to treat their trees preemptively. And of course, it depends on so many factors. And I checked in with our spotted lanternfly teammates on the green industry team. And it's a complicated question to answer. There's lots of different factors, and we're still learning so much about the population dynamics of spotted lanternflies. So it's really hard to predict whether we'll have a bad year or a not so bad year. But I think that's the first of many, many spotted lanternfly questions that we'll probably get in the coming weeks and months. But
yep.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks, guys, for being here. Let's bring on our guest for today, Tyler Pollock. He is the owner and operator of Dendro Tree and Landscapes in the Pittsburgh area, an ISA certified arborist, and a Penn State grad. So welcome on, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Excited to be on here. So.
Yeah. And so as we start our conversation with all our guests, we'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and your role at Dendro.
So a little bit about myself, a little background. My dad is a Penn State Extension agent, has been for 40 plus years now, I think. So his involvement in kind of what I'm doing now is played a huge role. Went to Penn State for landscape design and build. And from there, I met Jim Savage and I took his course. And all of a sudden I was moving down to Washington, D.C. to work for the Care of Trees at a Dulles down there. And also chased my now wife, who was then just my girlfriend, down there. She went to Georgetown. So I went down there for 3 years, learned how to learn the ropes, climbing trees and just working in that atmosphere. And then came back to Pittsburgh, had my own company with a fellow classmate from our 2014 graduating class. We did that. And then most recently I was at Bartlett out of Irwin. And then I made the move last summer into this winter, to start my own gig. And we've just been kind of working with the weather, a lot of storm damage last week. So, but other than that, just trying to provide a solid tree and landscape business to the community.
How many people? Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Was there a moment after you got your degree that you decided that you definitely wanted to do tree care? Was there like a defining moment? Because obviously you didn't become an extension agent like we did.
Yes.
Your dad.
Well, I think the defining moment, I took Jim's course, which is pretty much a climbing class. I mean, we were around campus climbing trees, learning knots and that kind of stuff. And I met then with his name was Chris Klimas. He worked for Davey, who owned the Care Trees. And he kind of just kept on me about going into the tree care industry. I was dead set on doing landscape design. Really love it. I still, the landscape, that's the part of that business. And it just stuck. I enjoyed the class a lot, and he got me to go down and visit some offices, and it kind of was just like, I'm going to give it a go. So I did, and the bug bit me, and it's never left. So it's just a passion. It just became a passion. Just the technical side of it, the scientific side of it, and helping just the oldest living thing, a tree. So it definitely, that's kind of how it just went, and the climbing side and that kind of stuff just is enjoyable to me. It's definitely, your day is not the same day after day at all. It's, you walk onto someone's property and you're looking at something completely different than the day before. So that's a part that I really enjoy.
And Jim's quite the character, so he's really good, I think, at selling tree care, work as a profession, because he comes down and does the instruction for the tree climbing school in my area. And I don't know how long he's been doing it, but he still has a passion for tree care and particularly safety, in the career that you've chosen. There's always the chance of, some sort of serious injury, but he takes all of that and makes it a really enjoyable experience. So that's neat to hear that you had him for class, and then, kind of help push you in that direction.
Oh yeah. And I still keep it. I still see Jim from time to time. I actually helped him last year he came out to do one of those climbing courses, and I helped him out. So that's always fun to see him and kind of help him out and keep that, like you said, the safe side of it, and the, always trying to teach the next person. I always enjoy that too, because there's not too many people who come into this with a passion and really want to grow. And when you see that, it almost makes me want to do it all the time. So,
yeah. How many people do you have working for you?
So right now it's myself, and then I have a part-time guy.
Okay.
That we do. Yep. And it's most of the stuff I'm doing now is I've had a network of landscapers that kind of just use me as almost like a contract climber. So they get the work. I come out and kind of say, hey, this is what this tree needs. And then we go and we do it. And most of the time, luckily they clean it up. So I get to do the fun part, and they get to
Make
do
a
the dirty
mess.
part.
Yeah.
Are you doing large takedowns? Just you yourself? Or any large
A
scale
lot of it,
pruning?
I try to focus on pruning.
Okay.
Takedowns are definitely something I did, and I've did them for years. It's just now the getting the wood out and just that kind of stuff is always the task. If I can't, most of the time, if I'm not doing it with a crane, I tend to let the guys that have the 5 to 8 guys on the crew that can haul it out in the day, and plus it sometimes gets a little bit just for me, like I just enjoy providing health to a tree rather than taking it down and getting it out. So that's what I'm trying to focus on. But yes, I'll do removals if it.
So you mentioned you do a lot of pruning. So, but then you also mentioned tree health or plant health. So do you do tree injections or some sort of the deal with these pest, insects, disease issues?
Yeah, so I'm a certified pesticide applicator. So I can provide those services. Injections, I like injections in bark sprays, just because you don't have to have big equipment to do, big sprays and stuff like that. Smaller ornamental stuff, boars, boxwood, leaf miner, psyllid, those kinds of things I kind of focus on. The injections for sure. I don't know, but around Pittsburgh area, I know Sandy will know this for sure. Oak wilt is a huge thing in our area. And it's crazy how it just hit a pocket of, Fox Chapel and a couple other areas around there where it's pretty sad to see some of these big red oaks really take effect. And then just, like white oaks, they do have some issues with it, but they deal with it a lot better than the red oaks. So stuff like that. And of course, as we all know, emerald ash borer, which is also the only trees that I know standing have all been on an injection plan. So
well, with oak wilt, will you go in and do some root pruning just so you don't have that transmission between trees? Or
so for the most part, from what I've seen and learned in my past experiences, that the treatment itself, since it does, root grafts and all that kind of stuff, the treatment itself does protect against that.
Okay.
Now, in serious cases where you have a stand of woods that are really getting affected, there has been some trenching, air spade, go into root prune, get that separation, just because I've seen hillsides just disappear, unfortunately, just because it's so quick to move from tree to tree that way. And then also, the beetle that jumps from tree to tree. Haven't seen too much of that. Mostly if they're close enough in root graft, then that's when you have some serious problems and you need to get the tree injected, inspected, and hopefully you just don't get that golden leaf drop in the middle of July. That's
well,
it's an amazing thing to see, though.
Well, from some of the reports we're hearing, earlier it was mentioned about the spotted lanternfly, the eastern part of the state. I think it's kind of made its entrance into western Pennsylvania. So you probably should be getting some calls, inquiries about spotted lanternfly that way, or is it not yet hit that far west?
Yeah, so spotted lanternfly is definitely it's becoming more of a thing, just due to the fact that it's so broadcast out there about being worried about the pest. We're not seeing eyes, far and few between.
Okay.
It's definitely here, but we just don't have the population that out east had by any means. And my in-laws actually live in Lidditz, PA, and I went out there and I was astonished because everyone was talking about it, and I thought, we just saw a couple here and there over here, and then I went there and it's all over the trees. I mean, it's crazy, the population out there and how different it is from our side of the state. Especially, but we're starting to see, I think it's becoming more prevalent, but like I said, I just don't see the population like you guys, like out east had. But it's definitely, they're definitely here to some aspect.
Your time will come, and then you'll have more calls than you'll know what to deal with everybody freaking out with their spotted lanternflies.
Yeah, but if it's anything like over here, it will be really, really intense for a couple of seasons, and then the population will just take a nosedive, and you're wondering when it's going to come back, or if it's going to come back. I think we kind of expect it to start acting like our, some other invasive insect pests like spongy moth, that every couple of years or a couple times a decade, we just get this crazy population, and then the next year it plummets. But yeah, to be determined, I guess.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of wondering, as you're talking about these different emerging diseases and pests, like how do you stay on top of what is new and what's emerging? Is it mostly you're getting calls from homeowners and you go out and look, and do you send a sample to the lab? Do you hear from other arborists, hey, there's this thing that we're starting to see? Do you hear from extension? Do you get information that way? Like, how do you stay on top of all of that with all of the change that's happening?
So for the most part, having my dad is an extremely it's
so Margaret, you go to extension then, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
There you
You've
go.
got a friendly connection. You've got an in.
He does a very good job of bringing me back to earth and say, hey, it's this time of year, like what are you seeing? And then of course he goes on the whole tangent of what he's been seeing and talking about, and he has and also through my time at Bartlett, I've learned a ton about growing degree days, and that's a huge thing for me because it puts a hard line on like when these pests are going to start coming out, so you can kind of start to pay attention. I also am a member of the Penn Association, so the ISA, in that they sent out a letter. Another one is actually, it's a really great one. It's free. It's actually the Maryland extension. They put out a really good monthly, pretty much list of things that are starting to show up there. And if there's, that gives us usually 2 to 3 weeks before it starts to show up in our area. So it's something that I go to and I'm reading, and if they see something new, just to pay attention to that, but also just as a reminder, like, hey, needle cast spray, that kind of stuff, fungicides, the apple scab, what they're seeing down there gives us a little bit of a buffer zone, where to go. And also just my contacts, I still have a bunch of contacts in Bartlett, and I always use them, but for the most part, I lean on my dad quite a bit because he's on it all the time, and especially being a fruit tree specialist, he helps remind me of what's coming up next and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I mean, the best way is getting on the property and looking for yourself, because we have on our side of the state, woolly delegate has really popped up again. I think it's tearing off a little bit, but it definitely exploded the last 2-3 years. So paying attention, and that's almost something that you got to go out and inspect for, and make sure you get on top of it, because it's not a crazy pest, but it's wild how quickly it can take over a whole population of hemlocks pretty quickly. But for the most part, and people all the time, people especially that are involved in their landscape, they know when something's different. They notice when their Japanese maple has a bunch of stuff that looks like rice on the branches. So then hey, you probably have scale. So for the most part, lean on the client to notice something that's going off, but also just letting that client be aware of what's coming, and especially like spotted lanternfly, they're pretty easily seen. And hey, pay attention for a black insect with white dots, because
Yeah,
that's when we
pretty
can really
distinctive.
affect them. When they're adults, they're kind of just big or tiny little birds that fly into you. But
Right.
when they're in the nymph stage, we can try to help out and take care of it. But
Yeah, I was always before this job, I was working more with consumer horticulture with extension, and I was always amazed. It was kind of a very cool way to see what were emerging problems in New Jersey, which is where I was working before. Just having all those eyes on landscape plants from homeowners, they're very observant, and I think a lot of times, some of those landscape plants can be in stressful situations in a homeowner's landscape. Whether someone hasn't watered, or the planting hasn't gone very well, or they have a bunch of the same species planted everywhere in a development, and so sometimes that is the first place you kind of see those problems popping up, and people notice when their plants look a little bit weird. And so it was kind of a cool network of diagnostic eyes on landscape plants, and we learned about a lot of things that way. Yeah.
Well, as an entomologist who came out of the University of Maryland IPM program, it warms my heart to hear you talking about like scouting and using growing degree days, because I think a lot of people still do not put an emphasis on that, and it really is, to me, not the best way to go about pest management. So that's great that you're doing that. The question I have is going to cycle out of like pest management back to your business. This is your second one that you've started on your own, and I've never started a business. It probably would run into the ground if I did. So what motivated you to do that? Was it just because you wanted to be your own boss, or was it that when working for Bartlett or some of these other experiences that you had, that you're kind of looking at it going, you know what, there's some things I think I can do better than what they're doing? Or in combination with where you are right now, was it an area where there wasn't a tree care service business and you're like, you know what, they need somebody to step in here and do this type of work?
so that's a great question. I think for the most part, I don't have anything bad to say about the companies I worked for prior. They all do great things. I think the biggest factor that really changed me into thinking about doing it full on was just the group of people I was working with. I slowly saw a change in my 10 years of doing this. When I first started down in DC, we had an unbelievable team of an older generation, but also a younger generation that really had a passion to do the work. And we all got along, and it was great, and we worked hard all together. And then, DC wasn't my favorite area, so I decided to move back home. And I just think it really comes down to just a passion. You got to have that passion to stick it out in this industry. I can't even tell you how many people have come and they work for a year and then they're done and they're completely out of the field. And even guys that I started with that had the passion, you keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And now a lot of them aren't even in the landscape industry anymore. So what kind of pushed me was I had the passion still. I was training guys and I could tell that they just didn't want to take that next step to maybe replace me in the position I was in, or even advance themselves. They were kind of just there for a job. And I just think I got to the point where it was, okay, well, it's great having that job security, working for a big company and coming in, but I have the passion. I want to go out and do it for myself. But on top of that, just know that the quality that I'm putting out there is coming from me. and not necessarily dependent on someone else on the crew or stuff like that. So I definitely think that, not necessarily thinking I can do it better, but I thinking that, you know, I can do it for myself and really feel good about it, rather than doing it for a bigger company. And then also hopefully finding a group of guys that are willing to have that passion and do it too, but have some fun.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
definitely career. Sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead, Tim.
Definitely careers. You know, like you're a prime example of that in tree care work or landscaping in general. And I don't think that a lot of younger people, you know, your age and maybe even younger, view it as a viable career, like long-term career path. And I think that's they're missing out on an opportunity. Now, obviously, I can't speak for everybody, but it's you're getting to work around living things. You're outside a lot. I mean, particularly or probably early on, and even still for you now, it's a lot of physical work. So you got to accept that and
Yep.
maybe in some ways be a masochist and enjoy doing that. But you know, as our green industry team, a number of times we've discussed, you know, trying how best to reach younger people, and that would go even to like middle school and high school, to get them to pursue a horticulture career. Is there anything that you could offer up that we might be able to do better to reach these people?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because I know after our graduating class, I know Martin and Dan, they saw a little bit of a downturn on the group of people, because we had like 35 kids in our landscape design class, and I think it never got back up to that point. And I've even tried, you know, there's a select few areas where going out and cutting your parents' yard is still a thing. And I've noticed that big time, especially with the newer guys that come out of college. They kind of already think that they don't need to put that brush in the chipper. They kind of think that they need to be the guy wearing the polo shirt, going to meet with clients, and, you know, using what they learned. But what we always try to tell them is that, and especially being a climber, and I've always think like a climber, the best groundsmen make the best climbers, because they know that step.
Mm-hmm.
They know the next step. They know the next step. They know, hey, I can be doing this while he's moving around the tree. I can get this brush to the chipper, and I can do that. And learning that in the field, I think, beats anything college wise. And I'm not saying college is, I went there, I graduated, I enjoyed every minute, you know, all the classes. But it's hard to, and I think the struggle, like you said, it's hard to depict that work ethic and in the hard labor side of it to someone. You can always sell the, hey, you get to work outside, you get to work with trees, you're going to learn, you know, species and how to identify, and you get to see different types of clients and different types of communities and that stuff. That's the easy sell. But then a lot of the time, the younger generation, younger than me, they come and they're dragging brush, you know, 100 yards through someone's backyard, and they're like staring at you like, what the heck? And I would always be there dragging it with them, and I'd kind of be like, and you know, I've always got the remark like, man, I can't wait until I'm the guy up in the tree. And the more veteran guys, we would all laugh, because we would all be down on the ground dragging brush, moving logs, you know, pounding in the 10-foot long lightning protection rod into the ground. Like, it just, we're just different, I guess. There's that different tick where we enjoy the work. We enjoy it. Like, we know it's going to get dirty. We know it's going to be loud. There's going to be days where you question everything you've ever done in your career. And I always try to depict that the best I can with young generation because it's fulfilling. I mean, I love it. It's cool. I can't lie that when I show up to a property and it looks like it's an overgrown forest and you go in and you prune it and it looks like it's a kept yard, that's the greatest feeling in the world. And then the client's happy and you meet a lot of cool people, you know, and for the most part in this industry, you can work on some cool properties. I've lucked out and worked at the White House, the Arlington Cemetery. I volunteered there, the National Arboretum, and that's the kind of stuff that I always try to tell the younger guys, like, it's a cool job. And, you know, and there's a lot of benefit to it. Most companies, you know, they pay for your ISA certification. They pay for your pesticide applicator. These are all things that stick with you, regardless if you stay with the company. Yeah. And a CDL. I mean, I have a CDL, and the only reason I have a CDL is because I went and worked for a tree company. But those are all benefits of things that stick with you. And I try to sell those points, and just the fact that, you know, you can make a career out of it. It's not just a job. If you want it to be a job, it is just a job. But if you want it to be a career, you know, there are some really amazing people out there that I've met that have been doing this for 40, 45 years, and they're still doing it. And that's what I always try to tell people, even when I was recruiting and stuff like that. You just have to show them and be honest with them. And I always thought that was a crutch a lot of times, that in the hiring process, it wasn't the most honest thing. They would show the end game when you're the sales arborist or the crew foreman or something like that, and not necessarily the part that's in between. And the part that's in between, like you mentioned, it takes a particular human being to enjoy getting sweaty and dirty and carrying 100-pound logs and laughing about it as you're doing it. Like, there is a little bit. I mean, I always said there's a bolt or two loose in my head, but
well, I was going to make that comment.
The business go ahead, Tim. It's learning the business from the ground up is, a lot of what you were saying.
Yes.
And one other comment there is, you talked about going on to some of these properties, and when you're done, it looks beautiful. And so, you went to school, you understand the science of what you're doing, the reason you're doing stuff, but you're also an artist, because this end result, there's an aesthetic appeal to it. So, the art and science of tree care, pretty important. But still sticking on this business thing. So, you graduated, I think, put a note down here, in 2014 from Penn State. So, roughly, several years later, you've started this business. Well, I guess you started a previous business. And, I'm always impressed with people who start business or entrepreneurial, because when you read the statistics, there's businesses failing all over the place every year. And you alluded to that. So if someone wanted to pull you aside and say, what are one or two things that I should be aware of if I'm starting a business in the horticulture world, or one or two pitfalls that you need to be aware of if you're starting a business from your experience?
So, I think the biggest thing is your support, and your networking. You can't do it on your own. You can, you can go out and make an LLC, and a lot of times what I see is guys that do it on the side, weekend warriors, and, they're building a name and they're doing stuff like that. But they got to remember that's, 52 days out of the year. There's 365. You got to fill the void, and you have to. And it was always something for me, I think, the discomfort of meeting people and talking to them. You have to put yourself out there. You have to build a network of people who are going to give you quality work give your name to their quality clients. I try always to meet, if I get on a new landscape and it's well kept, well maintained, I want to meet that landscaper. I want to build a relationship with him, because if he's doing it at this property, he's probably doing it at all of his properties. And with that, you build that relationship, and then you can, you grow from there, because they have someone that, does hardscapes, or they have someone that does this, and you can always keep those in your back pocket. And when you're building a network, and especially if you build a good relationship, the work's gonna come, and you can play off each other, work together a lot of the time. And my biggest, I think, like you said, a pitfall there is a lot of people think they can do it all on their own. And you have to have, your accountant, your lawyer, all these things are like, you don't think of when you're just doing it on the side. There's just so much to it anymore. All the stuff that you have to get done is that you're the knowledgeable one in your field, especially in the landscape world. I see a lot of times, people feel that they have to be the ones to do a certain thing or something like that. You got to show someone else how to do it, because it relieves that stress on you, and allows you to build, allows you to have that time to make the phone call to a landscaper or someone else and say, hey, what's going on? And next thing you know, you can get that ball rolling and more work coming in. And also not to let things that are out of your control bother you.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you that working in this weather, you just got to do it. You can't be, that's one of the things that's out of your control. It's going to rain today, but I can't tell you a day it's been accurate. Like, I woke up this morning, it wasn't raining, and I said, oh no, I probably should be doing something. And just, you gotta just kind of let that stuff skim off of you. Because I've learned when I let it stress me out is when things start to happen. You make mistakes. And in my world, mistakes are not a good thing.
Yeah.
It can easily turn into something that isn't great. But I had an excavator the other day, all of a sudden big piece of steel just broke. Don't know how it happened, just broke. And we sat there and we stared at it for a while, and we kind of were just like, all right, well, I guess, and then we got the shovels out. And it's just, you gotta overcome those things. You can't let them get you down. And always, I think that's my biggest, for me, it's like, it doesn't faze me. It did in the beginning, I won't lie, when I was young and 22 and climbing, and you make a mistake and it just like eats you alive. And now I kind of, okay, well, how do I fix that? How do I resolve it? How do we move on to the next step? Is a huge factor in why I think I'm still doing it. But it's definitely those kinds of things. And also just have a plan. Don't just go into a thing. Yeah, hey, I can do landscaping, or hey, I can do this, or I can do that. Have a plan. Where you want to be in a year, where you want to be in 5 years. And that involves equipment, employees, what you want to focus on, rather than just accepting every job. In our first business, we accepted, we did anything, we did everything. And it really slowed us down on doing what we wanted to do. Because we were taking on, you just did it because you had, and then we had 5 guys. So we were always thinking, okay, how do we keep them busy? And there was times where we were just keeping them busy and not necessarily doing the things that we truly wanted to do. And I think that played a factor in why we decided to stop, because it almost just became, it wasn't fun anymore. And that's another thing, is have fun. You got to have fun. You got to have fun with your crew. You got to have, it can't be a serious thing all the time, or you'll never keep people. And I think those are the couple things that I've learned. And another thing I would say is trust your instincts. Because if you feel wrong about something, or you just don't feel like a situation is going the direction you think it should, take a step back, take a deep breath, rethink it. And that's what especially trees are a very unforgiving, I would say, industry, where if you don't, like I was saying, have a solid plan, that's when things start to go awry. But if you take, and the second it feels weird, I said the second the tree feels weird, take a second, take a deep breath, reevaluate what you're about to do. And for me, that just calms the situation back down, and then you can refocus and get back to what you're doing. And it's definitely I enjoy it a lot. And with the client interaction, but it's a hard decision, but it's also a fulfilling one, is what I tend to tell people. You just gotta, and like I said, but you gotta let the small things roll off your shoulder. You can't, especially even on the client end of it, clients can get excited.
Oh, that's a nice word.
Yeah. And they can get overwhelmed sometimes with what's going on. And most of the time, you gotta just let them have their second. Let it out. Don't argue. I always, the second you start arguing is the second you lost.
Starts going downhill.
It's definitely, you got to take it with a grain of salt, and you can't let a lot affect you. And it's not, and unfortunately in my industry, in the world we live in, there's guys that take it to heart, and they get upset and they show it. And you never want to be the guy that's screaming on a job site, because that's the one guy everyone's looking at. So it's definitely those types of things. It all goes in the past, and always look for the future and what you can do to and learn from those situations. Learn from your failures. Learn not to do the thing that caused a situation on a job site, and say, hey, all right, we know that happened yesterday. Let's move on. Today's a new day, and kind of go that direction. That's kind of something that I've always been able to do. Made a mistake yesterday, but today it's not going to happen again.
So on the client side of things, and I think as we're sort of coming to the end of our conversation here, I kind of wonder if when a homeowner calls you, if a lot of the time you wish that they had called you months or years earlier as far as the tree health is concerned. And I kind of wonder, and you're not the first arborist that we've interviewed, so I have some ideas of what you might say, but in terms of overall tree health and kind of homeowner responsibility, is there sort of one thing that is a misconception or a misunderstanding that homeowners have about trees that you wish they understood to kind of bolster the long-term health of the trees on their property?
So there's been many instances where you get the phone call and it's only been dead for a month. And okay, well, can you tell me what kind of, I think it's a pine tree. And so going into it, that's kind of a red flag sometimes. But if the bark's off the tree, it's been dead for a long time. And at that point, and I always ask, when they say that, I always ask, is there bark still on the tree? Is there any green in the winter it's a little harder, but in the summer months, is there green foliage anywhere on the canopy? Is it 60 feet of a blue spruce and 10 feet of a live top? I try to use things that are easily visible for them to see.
Yeah.
But also, depending on where you're at and location wise, when you buy a house and you have a mature tree on the property, it's kind of up to you to start that process as a homeowner. And majority of us arborists, we come out for free to inspect your trees. Extension agents come out for free to help you with any questions. You have to take those steps if you have a lot of mature trees, to focus on that and, have them come out, do the inspection. It's most of the time it's free and you're going to learn something. But, a lot of the time, unfortunately, you buy the house and renovations start in the inside, and that takes so many years. And then all of a sudden, 5 years, you're living in the house for 5 years and you decide that you want something done on the outside. And your tree that you bought the house for was in decline. And now at this point, an arborist comes out and tells you that you got to get it removed. So as a homeowner, if you want to be in touch with your trees, have someone come out and take a look. It's that easy. And then you can tell them where to go in items like that, because you don't, guys like myself hate to see it when you show up and the tree that could have been easily removed now involves a crane, or we're cutting down 2 other trees just so we can get the equipment to safely remove it. It's definitely something, and a lot of times summer months are the best time, because if the foliage is out, and you can see if your tree pushes, or if it has a lot of dead wood. That's another key thing, because a lot of times, and what I always tell people, a healthy tree usually doesn't get a pest. It doesn't get a disease. They have their own way of doing that. And when you let one thing go, it creates, and I'm sure you guys have heard the death cycle of a tree. And it starts with stress. 9 out of 10 times it's the roots, it's the soil, it's compaction, it's those kinds of things. And especially, and that's another thing as a homeowner, if you bought the house and you have these beautiful trees and you want to put a nice patio underneath your trees. Well, your access points on the left side of your house, and there's a line of trees, and you just, the contractor drives over it back and forth, doesn't put any mulch down. And items like that caught, you'll have some serious issues caused from that. Construction, compaction, and most of the time it's easily fixed with, you come in there with an air spade, you make nice mulch beds. And with that mulch bed, it's an easy thing to do. You can definitely, as a homeowner, don't plant grass right up to your tree roots. You're going to hit them with your lawnmower. You're going to hit them with the weed whacker. And it's going to allow insects and pests and diseases to have an entry point at the base of the tree. So those are types of things as a homeowner you can do to help prevent stuff, put a mulch ring around it. It doesn't have to be massive, just a little buffer zone. And think about when you do your projects outside, you're going to affect the tree in some way, but it's as easy as making a phone call and having someone come out and just inspect your property. They'll let you know what needs to get done or what's of concern, or if you're the 1 in a million lucky person that has the perfect property.
Yeah, try to be preemptive rather than reactive.
Exactly. Yes.
Well,
Because if you let that, it's crazy how time affects those things and how quickly, you have one hemlock with woolly adelgid, and if you would have taken care of that one hemlock, then the rest of yours would be fine. But you just say, oh, it's just one hemlock, and next thing you know, the whole lot in your yard is covered in woolly adelgid. It was easy, and woolly adelgid is a very easily prevented disease. It doesn't take much to control it. And those are always kinds of things that it takes. Treating one tree to save the rest of them in those aspects. But just as a homeowner, and if you just gotta kind of step back and think before you do. And if you see something weird and a lot of time I always tell clients after a rain on their big trees to just look around. You see a fungal body. To you, that doesn't mean, the homeowner probably doesn't mean much, but for me, it can rule out a lot of things, depending on what kind of mushroom's growing, just to show if it's decay feeding mushroom or, the worst enemy of a tree, Ganoderma, or, and a lot of things that homeowners wouldn't notice, like cankers, Phytophthora, that kind of stuff. That's like a blimp for us, arborists, that, that's something, but we can help you with that. Because going down the life cycle, there's a lot of preventable things, but once the ambrosia beetle shows up, it's almost said and done. So if you're a tree lover, just have someone come out and inspect it. And most of the time it's, they do it free of charge, and they'll write you up what they think needs to be done, and then you can go from there.
Yeah. Be observant. Look at your canopy in the summer. Don't drive over the roots and call an arborist.
Put in a get mulch around there. And it's crazy how much that organic matter helps, regardless of how big or not. But it definitely, instead of trying to get grass to grow in the area that has 10 trees, you don't have to mulch it every year, but get something down. And another thing that, us arborists always have to get rid of is chips. So you can get a free load of nice wood chips delivered right to your house, and that stuff breaks down and creates great soil. So it's, little things like that really go a long way for tree health, and it's out there. All you gotta do is pick up the phone and call.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, thanks so much. I think we have to wrap up our conversation. But it's been so interesting hearing about your business, and you obviously enjoy teaching people and training people, and you have a lot of really good perspective, being a new business owner. So we really appreciate that. We like to end our episodes by asking our guests what they like to do when they're not working. So I posed that question to you. What do you do when you're not being an arborist?
So I have a 2-year-old, and he loves being outside. So even we're outside all the time now, and I enjoy that a lot now, learning all that. And I also am an avid archery hunter.
Oh, wow.
So I spend a lot of times outside and hiking through the woods and just pretty much doing what I do on a daily basis, but it's a lot more quiet when doing it that way. So
slightly different equipment you're carrying.
Yep. And I'm pretty simple. I don't need too much. This is the kind of things I do. I love and as you said, I really do enjoy it. I enjoy the field. So a lot of the time I you'll find me doing something in my house along the lines of pruning or landscaping, or taking a plant from a client's property that they don't want anymore and trying to make it be involved in my landscape. So.
Yep.
Very cool.
I
well,
got to
that's
squeeze
great to
one
hear.
question in real fast. So as an arborist and as a tree climber, do you have your complement of tattoos?
No, I have no tattoos.
Oh, because that's usually what I
Is that
associate
rare?
with all the arborists I run into. They're all
Yes,
tatted
I
up.
know.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and don't believe me. I have gotten all the names thrown at me for not having tattoos as an arborist. The guys, and you're right. Pretty much all of them I've worked with have some form of tree or something on them, and I don't know. I just never did it.
Well, good for you for staying the course for what you want to
do. Yeah, it's good to be an individual. Well, thank you so much, Tyler. This has been really fun. We've loved talking to you, and we appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I look forward to keeping up with you guys. And anytime you want me to come back, I'll gladly do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Right.
Thank you.
No problem.